All right, so Obito is broken. Like, I don't think this is new to anybody. So today we're gonna be spicing up a pretty decent video, I think, to hopefully balance it out. Today I got my boy Sage with me. Say hey, everybody.
Yo, what's up, guys? Always good to be on the channel. I'm back cooking with lightning.
I wanted to do this because I've already done Itachi versus Pain, done Obito versus Pain, done Itachi versus Obito, but I have not done a 1v2 of the big three. So we're going to take a look at the strongest, quote unquote, Akatsuki versus the other two strongest of the big three at different points in the series. So the first versions that we're going to do is the Akatsuki version, like the Akatsuki Days versions of these characters. So Orange Mask Obito versus Itachi and the Six Paths of Pain. Now, the Itachi we're going to cover first here is going to be Sick Itachi because we have to do it like in canon. We will go over a hypothetical healthy Itachi. I know there is no such thing in the series. We understand that. But, I mean, just to do it the most justice, we have to like try to, come up with a hypothetical healthy for Itachi here. So, with this one, I'll be honest, man. Obito's fighting an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah.
Like he's staring down somebody who already he recognizes both of them as a serious threat. And I think the biggest thing that's going to play a part in this is intel. Now, Obito will have probably the slight edge in this, if I'm going to be honest with you, because he knows quite a bit about the Rinnegan because he gave the Rinnegan to Nagato, and he obviously is aware of pretty much everything that Itachi has in his arsenal, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he watched the fight between he and Sasuke. I think maybe the only thing he didn't know is, the Kodo Matsukami, but that's neither here nor there. Other than that, I mean, he's got pretty much intel, like full intel on both these characters. Now, conversely, Itachi was kind of like implied not to have everything on Obito. As a matter of fact, he still thought this was Madara. He's not gonna. He probably knows, a good decent bit about Kamui, but I don't know if he knows like the ins and outs of it specifically. Unlike how Conan did.
Yeah. So here's the thing. One of the issues that Obito is going to run into is the fact that Pain probably knows about his 5-minute timer. The reason for this is shout out to Virtue for finding this. This is a Virtue original, so credit there. But the reason for this is basically we know that Pain has the Rainmaker Jutsu, which allows for him to create rainstorms. And in those rainstorms, each raindrop is actually containing his chakra. And so it actually allows for him to sense everything that's going on in the entire village based on feeling it with his chakra, sensing it with the chakra of the raindrops. This is important because the databook profile on this specifically says that he makes it rain every Sunday. But we see in the iconic panel everybody's aware of where Obito turns over his shoulder, looks at Pain and Conan and says, "My power, the power of Naruto Shippuden." It's raining in the background. But before this, Conan notices it's raining. She asks, "It's raining?" And then she says, "Nagato, are you ... She's confused as to why it's raining, meaning it's probably not a Sunday, because if it was raining on the day it's supposed to rain, she wouldn't be confused about it. So Obito walks out, he notices it's raining as well, and then makes that statement. So what this probably means is that Pain activated the Rainmaker Jutsu in order to sense Obito whenever he left, to try to get a better understanding of his abilities, which would then explain why Conan has intel on the 5-minute timer, because if he is walking or running through the Hidden Rain Village in this rain that Pain can sense for 5 minutes, and he's phasing through the chakra passively, it would lead to him hitting that 5-minute timer and being forced to materialize. So, that being said, Pain should know about this 5-minute timer, which is going to be a huge problem for Obito, especially when you consider all of the abilities that these two have, and the fact that he has all of these animal summons that he can use in conjunction with these abilities, plus Itachi's clones that he can make, plus the crows that he can utilize to kind of swarm Obito. So as soon as they engage in this battle, I think what's going to happen is Pain is going to inform Itachi as to, how to counter his phasing ability with that 5-minute timer, and they're just going to try to overwhelm him and prevent him from being able to do anything and potentially make him hit that 5-minute timer.
And I told this to Sage, like, both Pain and Itachi have ways of utilizing the counter to Kamui here. Pain, for obvious reasons, like Sage just brought up, he has a whole bunch of summons that he can just summon on the spot to give him enough trouble. And the thing is, is that Obito really only has ceiling to rely on as far as getting these animal summons off the field, or out of play. Which he has to materialize, obviously, to do that. And once he does, he is left, open to an attack from either Itachi's Amaterasu, Totsuka Blade, if Itachi is fast enough, or any of the other paths of pain that come in and, speed blitz or something. But the thing is, though, is like, we don't want to downplay Obito here, because this same Obito was able to teleport into Onuki's particle style box, grab Sasuke, and get out before he's even remotely damaged. Like, we don't even see any part of Obito's cloak being like gone from the particle style. Like, there's no hint of damage whatsoever. So Obito was, and then not too long after that, like, he avoided the blitz from the Raikage. Obito does have his hands full here. It's just the problem of, like, if Pain does decide to bring out all the summons on the spot, which is not, out of character. Like, I've said this before, like, there is no fight that either Nagato or Pain takes part in where he doesn't use summons, at least, like, from the jump. He does it in the fight with Jiraiya, does it pretty much in the fight with B and Naruto, and he does it when he invades the Leaf Village. So there's no reason to assume he wouldn't summon the animal summons right from the get-go. And so that's going to put a lot of pressure on Obito, not to mention, like I said earlier, Itachi. And whether this is sick Itachi or not, like, Obito still recognizes Itachi as a serious threat. Like, he told Hebi Sasuke that you would have been killed even if Itachi was sick, if he had decided to go all out. So, and he says it in the dub, he says it like, you definitely would have been killed. Like, he would have easily killed you. Sealing these animals is already going to be a time and a half for Obito. And I brought up this stage too, is that if Itachi is clever enough, especially if he gets the intel from Pain, like Sage said, he might be able to make a couple of clones and try to bait and switch Obito into trying to pull one of the clones in and try to detonate the clone on command. And we saw something similar happen when he was fighting Konan. Like his arm was completely blown off. And Obito has said he underestimated Konan. So that there is that. And this is not Konan. This is Pain and Itachi we're talking about here. He won't be taking them lightly. But if that does happen, Hashirama still or no, I don't know if he'll be in a good enough condition to keep fighting both Pain and Itachi at the same time.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. And then, now, I will say, on an individual basis, I do have Obito over Pain and Itachi, just like in a 1v1. Yeah, and a big part of that is I think he can counter their abilities pretty well. If he's just dealing with one of them. Like, for example, in Fanbook 2, we get a statement that says Kamui allows for Obito to pass through all ninjutsu and physical attacks, which Fanbook 2 covers up to the 5 Kage Summit, so we've already seen Shinra Tensei, Bansho Tenin, Chibaku Tensei, and they are ninjutsu, so ninjutsu should just phase through him, including those. I used to be of the opinion that those might work against him based on the fact that they are stated to manipulate gravity, and we know that he falls, right? He still falls prey to gravity, like when he's falling into the giant sea of paper bombs. But the problem is, like, it's a ninjutsu, right? And that statement just says that all ninjutsu will phase through him. So I do think he has counters for that. I think he can obviously phase through the missiles, the prey to path absorbing his ninjutsu. I mean, he doesn't really fire off large-scale ninjutsu that often in this form, so that won't be much of an issue. Like, every single one of the abilities that Pain has on an individual basis, he should be able to counter. And then the same thing for Itachi. I mean, I'm of the opinion, and I think it's the correct opinion, I made a video on this, going over why Obito's Kamui is probably what countered Amaterasu, not Izanagi. The most pressing thing here in terms of that argument is, number one, it says that, or most pressing things, I should say. Number one, it's stated that he comes away unscathed. If you lose an eye due to Izanagi, you're not coming away unscathed. But furthermore, or whenever Obito says that Itachi didn't know everything about him, you could say that that's in reference to his Kamui as opposed to Izanagi, because he probably believes that Obito, who he thinks is Madara, has Izanagi, as he references that Uchiha from the past used to spam this thing. So I think it's more reasonable to assume that statement is probably in regards to the aspects of Kamui that Itachi may not be familiar with, such as being able to phase through attacks before they hit him, or such as the fact that it's just a passive phasing ability. It's not something he has to necessarily activate, which I also cover in another video called You Probably Don't Understand Kamui. So if you want answers on that, go check that out. But long story short, the abilities that both these guys have on an individual basis, he should be able to counter. But the big problem is when they're put together, like I was talking about earlier, with the clones, the crow summons, the big animal summons Pain has, plus 6 Pain bodies, they might just be able to overwhelm him and force him to materialize if they continue to press him. And his only real counter at this point in time for the animal summons is going to be sealing them. Now, this is an underrated aspect of Obito's arsenal because he's able to like rework Naruto's tetragram seal in the war arc using obviously sealing jutsu, and the tetragram seal is just 2 4-prong seals stacked on top of one another, and the 4-prong seal in the data book is stated to be able to seal away bodies of chakra and large enemies, so he should just be able to seal away these animal summons, but he probably has to materialize to do it. So whenever you have all of these summons running around, plus the crows, plus again Itachi, his clones, the 6 paths of pain, all being able to pressure him, it just puts him in a sticky situation to where his one real counter for the animal summons at this point in time wouldn't really work, so he's going to be stuck in a pickle. I think his only real option here, honestly, would be to get an Izanagi off at some point in time and trick one of them, but that's going to be really difficult with all the eyeballs on the battlefield, with the animal summons, with the 6 paths of pain, with Itachi being able to watch him with the Sharingan, etc. So I actually think that in this battle he probably loses just due to the fact that even though he does have counters for every single one of their abilities on an individual basis, putting all of their abilities together, plus the intel that Pain has, plus the fact that his counters for one of the main things Pain's going to do in the battle not being able to work without putting himself at risk, I think is a real problem for Obito here. And that doesn't even factor in like what Lightning was talking about with the shadow clone explosion thing. It's like, I would argue we don't really know how quick the detonation speed is, so it might not be a win condition, but it would at least be something that he might have to watch out for, and it's possible that it could be fast enough that he could still damage him while he's warping away the clone if they're able to do that bait and switch thing. So yeah, for me, I would say Obito probably loses here mid to high diff, just based on the fact that those two together are going to be a real problem for him. And I also think it's worth noting, whenever Itachi and Nagato get to the battlefield and they're, reanimated as the Edo Tensei, Itachi makes a really important statement where he says with their ocular powers combined, they can take on anyone, which he should be factoring in Obito there. So I do think it's reasonable to assume that these two together should be able to pressure him enough to be able to land a significant blow at some point in time, countering his Kamui ability by pressuring him with all the different aspects of their arsenals they can utilize in conjunction.
Now, going on to the next round, this is going to be, I know this is going to seem like we're kind of contradicting ourselves, because this is obviously going to be White Mask, War Arc, Obito versus Edo Itachi and Edo Nagato. Edo Nagato at full power from the start, just to, get semantics out of the way. But like I said, it's going to sound like we're contradicting ourselves, but like this Obito has a much better scaling. Like, here's the thing, just to give a good point of reference, Orange Mask Obito lost an arm to Fu and Torine, whereas this White Mask War Arc Obito was literally going toe-to-toe 1v4 against Naruto, B, Kakashi, and Guy, and none of them were able to hit him until Kakashi figured out that it was Kamui that was the counter to Obito's jutsu. But now, and don't be wrong, like the summons are still, a hassle to deal with, but now Obito has the Rinnegan rods, and he did like have them technically in the Orange Mask, but I just feel like they're like, I don't know, he's more liable to use them here than he is in, when his Orange Mask days. And so like he has the Rinnegan rods that he can just shoot out from his eyes or whatever to block the chakra points of each of the summons. He also can use this in Orange Mask, what I'm about to say, but I think it's more likely he'll be able to do it here. He can also exploit the animal summons by throwing kunais and whatnot in their eyeballs to, render them useless. But depending on how many animal summons we can like give Nagato here at once, which we did say, like, we kind of give up like the benefit of the doubt where if crippled Nagato can summon 2 to 3, and we say 2 to 3 because we kind of noticed as before we started recording that Nagato summoned the chameleon kind of off screen, and we kind of made a joke like maybe he summoned the chameleon as it was already invisible. And so like if he's able to summon 3 at the same time while he's crippled, full power Nagato should be at least able to summon 3 more, bare minimum, if not more than that. So if we assume he's able to put out all the summons at once, at the same time, that's going to be a problem for Obito too. But again, he has like the giant shuriken from the Kamui dimension that he can just lob out, and they were strong enough to cut Yuki's tentacles, so they're no joke. The Rinnegan rods, kunais that he can throw at their eyeballs or whatever. If he needs to, he can summon the Geto statue. And obviously, Nagato being Edo, he can't do that. So Obito's got the Geto statue if he needs it. So it becomes a little bit more of an even playing field, even with all the animal summons. Now, going on to Itachi, like Sage said, if it's a 1v1, like, I do believe White Mask Obito should beat Itachi here, even in Edo. Even with all the, potential Amaterasu spam, the Susanoo spam, Yadamir, Totsuka Blade. I just still think that 1v1, Obito should take it. Now, granted, as Sage said, with Itachi's statement there, you could make a good argument that they mean Obito, but that honestly might be in regards to Orange Mask Obito and not White Mask Obito. I don't know if they've actually, before they became conscious, I don't really know if they were aware that, Obito had the Rinnegan.
Yeah, they definitely shouldn't know that because they were summoned by Kabuto, and we know that they're still in their boxes whenever Kabuto and Obito are having their conversation. So yeah, it should just be in regards to Orange Mask Obito and everybody else that they know of up to that time frame. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to bring this up earlier too, but I wanted to wait till this point because I think it's a lot more likely that it will happen. I brought the exploding shadow clones as a viable option, and it's still a viable option here, but the fact that Obito was able to get Sasuke out of particle style and get them both out before they're disintegrated, before he's even detected by anybody else in the room, Obito might be able to, if Itachi is successful in using the bait and switch clone exploding thing or whatever, get Obito in a position where he sucks in one of the clones and Itachi tries to detonate it on command, what could happen is Obito could be pulling it in, and he might have the reaction time necessary to stop the initial Kamui suck and start phasing through the explosion. Just given off of what we've seen through his fight with Naruto, B, Kakashi, and Guy, I don't know, man. I'm not too confident even in Edo, Itachi, and Nagato.
Yeah, well, and that last part to me is the important part because you and I did a video a while back going over Itachi versus Kakashi, and we both have War Art Kakashi above Itachi. So it's Kakashi above Itachi, and then I think most people would agree KCM2 Naruto over Nagato. But then you're also adding in Guy, who's a Kakashi rival, so somebody else who should also be above Itachi, and then B, who's a KCM1, maybe KCM2 Naruto rival whenever he's in his Gyuki transformation, right? And Obito was able to fight all of them by himself without the Bijou for a prolonged period of time. So for me, it's okay, so he's already shown that he's capable of fighting more competent opponents all together at once, even without the Bijou. So I think it's reasonable to assume he would be able to fight them. Now, the thing about the Shadow Clone explosion is I think intuitively most people would agree that KCM Naruto's Rasengan is probably more potent than Itachi's Shadow Clone explosion jutsu, or at least in the same ballpark, and Obito straight up tanks that. Takes a direct hit on his shoulder and tanks it. So I think even if he's hit with the Shadow Clone explosion jutsu, whether it be in Kamui or outside of Kamui, it's not really gonna do anything. He might just no-sell it, so for me, I don't even think there's anything in their arsenals that would allow for them to do much of anything, especially when you also then, as Lightning said, factor in that the Geto Mazo is going to be a viable option here for not only combating them, but also using the Phantom Dragons to seal them, using the chains to restrain the summons. He also, as Lightning said, has a direct counter that he didn't have before for these animal summons with the Rinnegan rods. Because something people don't really know about the black belted blades, as they're called, is he can produce those prior to having the Rinnegan, because he has the prerequisite for it with both Hashirama's and Uchiha chakra, right? But the thing is, the Rinnegan is the thing that allows for the chakra suppression property, where whenever you actually implant these rods into your enemies, you're able to restrain them and keep them from using their chakra effectively, like what Madara did against Hashirama in his Edo form, right? So he's now going to have the option of just implanting his own chakra into these summons, keeping them totally restrained, or using the Geto Mazo chains, or using the Phantom Dragons. So it's like he doesn't just have to make contact with them and use the 4-prong seal to seal them anymore. So it gives him a much more viable option for being able to actually take down the problems that he previously had, right? So I do think this version of Obito just is demonstrably better than these guys, both on an individual basis and also in terms of his overall combat power versus both of them. Because again, you know, if he's able to take on Kakashi, Guy, KCM2, Naruto, and B without the Bijou, he should be able to take on Edo Nagato and Edo Itachi without the Bijou. And the Phantom Dragons, which he should be able to use, plus the chains, which we know he can use, should be able to just allow for him to counter or seal away or restrain Itachi and Nagato individually. The Rinnegan rods can suppress them to where they can't attack him anymore. Maybe you could say that the Rinnegan rods would be countered by Nagato, but we don't really know that. Even if you just say for the sake of argument they would, it still has the Phantom Dragons. Nagato, again, as an Edo, doesn't have access to the Geto Mazo itself, so he can't really combat that. And then if he does just decide to seal away the summons, we know that things that can be summoned, if they're sealed away, can't be summoned again without being unsealed, because Madara tries to summon the Kyuubi, Kurama, and because it's sealed inside of Naruto, he's unable to summon it. So all of his moves, or all of his problems he had in the first matchup, he does not have here, and he has viable counters for not only their Edo Tensei bodies, being able to seal them away or restrain them and then seal them away, but also for the animal summons. And again, his Kamui should just work to counter all of their primary abilities.
Yeah, so the two things I want to bring up real quick to bring this case to a close is, one is that we also forget that the Rinnegan can absorb any ninjutsu. So any ninjutsu that comes from both Nagato and Itachi, given the speed feats from Obito as far as reaction time, he should, because we saw that, now granted this was a Juito feat, but as far as pre-Gok, I don't think it's going to be too far in between. But Obito was able to preemptively put up his staff to block Amaterasu from Sasuke, from EMS Sasuke, who is scaling higher than Edo Itachi. So there is no reason to think that Rinnegan Obito should not have the precog necessary to do the exact same thing, but absorb it instead. So most of the ninjutsu that Itachi and Nagato possess can potentially be absorbed by Obito. The second thing is gonna sound pretty far-fetched. I'm only bringing this up because it happened in the anime and the manga, but it's also in the Shinobi Striker video game. We saw that Obito is able to put up the Uchiha flame formation to protect the Geto statue from any attacks. Now, there is a different, maybe a good call to say that Obito might be able to do it on himself as a defense move. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but if he can do something like that on a Geto statue of all things, I don't see why, it can't be a viable option to defend himself from any attacks. So there is that. And then the last thing I want to bring up is something that's a big argument within the Naruto power scaling community about the Totsuka blade working on Obito if he phases. Me and Sage, we've no doubt talked about this before, but the thing is I get people's argument because it's a spiritual weapon. It should be able to still pierce Obito even if he phases through. The thing is, though, is it's not making contact. It's almost as if Obito isn't in the same plane or isn't there at all. The Totsuka blade, yeah, it's a spiritual weapon, but it's in the same plane as Obito. When Obito phases part of his body, he is leaving the plane. So I don't know how much more clear it can get than that.
Yeah, also, the statement that people reference is the one that says that it has no physical form, but that can just mean that it has no standard physical form or no set physical form, and that it can change its physical form at will, like how the spirit weapon Yada Mirror can also change its form and account for even omnidirectional attacks, changing its size, changing its shape, things like that. And we know that this applies with the Totsuka blade because it's able to be extended, and then even whenever the gourd is initially opened, we actually see that not only does it change its shape because it spills onto the ground, but it also displays aspects of physical things in the sense that it's affected by gravity by spilling to the ground, in the sense that it's able to cut right through things like the Hydra heads in a way that a physical blade would. And then also whenever Orochimaru is stabbed by it, he bleeds on the blade. We see blood actively running down the blade. So we do know that it has some physical properties in some type of way. So it's not that it never has a physical form or that it never has physical properties. It's probably more so the case that it can be shaped and bent to, however he wants it to be. So it doesn't have a set physical form as opposed to just being entirely ethereal all of the time, because we do just see evidence in canon that it takes on physical properties, at least while it's being operated. So I do think that it's fair to say that he should be able to phase through it, but even if you don't think he'd be able to phase through it due to like physical properties, again, you'd have to just say that Itachi's able to get close enough and that the Totsuka blade is fast enough to actually tag him, which I don't think you could ever actually make an argument for. Maybe you could say it would catch him off guard because he would expect for it to be physical, but then again, like I said, it does demonstrate that it has physical properties in some capacity. So I don't think that the arguments for it not being able to pierce Obito are very good, for those reasons.
Yeah, so I think we, can definitively agree that White Mask or Obito still takes these two mid to high div. It's definitely not easy at all for Obito. Like I said, he definitely recognizes both these characters as a serious threat. So both of them together at full power with no restraint is definitely going to be tough. But given what we've laid out, I think White Mask Obito should still take this.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's going to be difficult for him because of all the things he still has to deal with. So it's not going to be like a walk in the park, but he has the arsenal and the proper tools to be able to counter all of their abilities. And, it's just going to be a huge problem trying to take him down. Like, one of the things that Lightning and I kicked around earlier on was Izanami, because we know that Obito is conflicted. So mentally, he is in the right mind space to actually fall prey to that. But the question is, it's twofold. Number one, would Itachi be able to replicate physical interactions with him at all? Because that's one of the prerequisites for it. He has to perform a physical action where he and Obito take physical action against one another and then replicate that action later on. But because of Obito's fighting style and because of the Kamui, it's going to be very difficult to do that. But number two, one of the more underrated things that people don't seem to talk about very often is Itachi low-key prepped Kabuto for it, because he's talking to him prior to activating the Izanami, like saying like, oh, you don't have to do this, isn't who you are, you're just living in Orochimaru's shadow, do you even know who you are? Like, he was already prompting him to kind of be in a mind state that was unstable and questioning his existence and like who he was. And I don't think he'd be able to do that with Obito because he doesn't know who Obito is. He thinks he's Madara, so he's not aware of some sort of like psychological identity crisis that he can exploit. So I think that even Izanami would be off the table. So yeah, their arsenals just aren't going to be able to compete with what he has going on here. And then for those of you who do think that Orange Mask might fall prey to Amaterasu, because even if you think that the stellar argument I put forward earlier doesn't actually apply and that it was Izanagi, he can just absorb it now. Like, we see that Madara absorbs it. It's just stated by Naruto, like, oh, don't use your black flames on him. He can absorb ninjutsu. So we do know that he has that counter for that as well. So it's like his arsenal is just too broken at this point in time. And again, for me, it comes down to sum it up as simply as possible. He's able to take on combatants who are stronger than Itachi and Nagato, and even more than just two of them at a time without the Bijou, so he should be able to take them on, especially all things considered.
So now the last round is going to be, we were going to do Jubito versus the same Edo combatants, but, I don't want to cry for Edo. So
sort of Nunaboku GG.
Yeah. So to put a more even playing field, I say that with an asterisk on the side. We'll do Edo Itachi and Edo Nagato at full power versus DMS Obito. Now, on paper, it sounds like they are on a even, more even playing field compared to Jubito. But are they really? Because if we're just straight taking out DMS Kakashi and replacing it here with a longer timer, and I say timer as in non-existent, really, then what are they even going to even do? Like, because you got somebody here who is able to, phase through every attack and long range snipe even faster than what we had already seen prior to both eyes being together. And then you have somebody who can also, put up a perfect Susanoo. And even if you wanted to, like, bare minimum not give Obito the perfect Susanoo, you can still give him like the half body Susanoo that Sasuke had in the Five Kage Summit, but he'd still have Kamui Shuriken to negate any attack that Itachi and Nagato throw out. And again, not having it, he has like 6 pass chakra. He doesn't have a timer. I don't know, man. He still has Hashirama cells to negate any like eyesight deterioration. So this is an Obito who, like, the only argument you could make is chakra reserves. Like, that is going to be it. But I don't think this is going to be a battle of attrition.
Yeah, I mean, and the Hashirama cells is one that we didn't even have to bring up for the previous one, but like he can just use these large-scale wood-style ninjutsu to combat the summons and things like that. But most importantly, we know that he's able to sync up his Kamui with Kakashi, meaning that his long-range Kamui should be at least relative to Kakashi's long-range Kamui, and Kakashi's long-range Kamui was able to warp away an entire KCM2 Naruto clone moving at full speed, faster than Obito himself was able to recognize what was going on. And so that long-range Kamui is going to be a gigantic issue, because neither Itachi nor Nagato scale to KCM2 Naruto in terms of combat speed. Neither of them do. And so even if you want to say, like, oh, well, if he warps them both away, then, like, the next time he phases, he's screwed. It's like, yeah, sure, I guess, because they're going to be eternally living in there, I would imagine. However, the problem with that is he doesn't have to warp them away in their entirety. We know that, like, when Edos are healing, when they're recovering from, like, severe injuries, they can't really move. So he could just snipe off their upper halves and then go up and seal them with the tetragram seal. Then there's not really anything they can do. So yeah, I just think Kamui GG. There's nothing they can do against him. Like, he's winning this probably in moments.
Yeah, so I wanted to do a even playing field round for this, but there's really not when it comes to DMS Obito. Like, we already saw how scary DMS Kakashi was with a timer, and you replace that with somebody without a timer. Yeah. So I think that's going to be it. I mean, Sage, unless you got anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, I think we covered it well. At the end of the day, Obito's cracked. Itachi and Nagato are both really strong characters, but they kind of serve as these benchmarks for earlier in the series. Like, they're like early war arc characters that kind of exist and have their peaks in pre-war arc stuff, with like Itachi versus Sasuke and Pain versus Naruto, and then we get some of their stuff in the war arc as well. But Obito is like the final boss, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, he's not technically the final boss because like Madara and Kaguya come, but he's just on a totally different tier whenever you get into these like DMS kind of conversations. And then even with White Mask, his arsenal's just too busted, the scaling is too high. There's not a lot that they can do. So I think their best hope is against Orange Mask Obito, obviously. But yeah, at the end of the day, we have them beating Orange Mask Obito, losing to White Mask Obito with or without the Bijou, and then losing badly to DMS Obito.
So there y'all have it. There's the rest of the video. Thank you, Sage, so much for being on the channel again.
Yeah, anytime, man. It's always a good time whenever we get to cook. So looking forward to doing many more like this. We'll have some collabs coming in the future on both of our channels. So make sure to, like, subscribe, notification bell, all that stuff for both those if you guys haven't yet. And yeah, man, it's been fun.
So there y'all have it. Thank you all so much for watching all the way to the end. Like you said, like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to both channels if you haven't already. I'll leave a link for Sage's channel in the description below. Thank you all for watching. Until my next one, let us know. Out.